shores and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fishery. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around, my friend, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can. It tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.
Hi there, come on in. We are on the verge of several of the public TV stations in the state have their auctions. Now you can buy a trip to come fishing with us from these stations if your auction is coming up in your area. The trip is going to be this summer, this July, on the Captain Nichols Party Boat. We're going to show you the trip that we had last year. We've done this, I think 6 or 7 years in a row. Perch fishing, terrific. You end up with some great fish to eat. Speaking of fish and wild game to eat, we are going to talk about wild game dinners, why ours was canceled, and why wild game dinners are facing right now a threat in this state. We also have a great recipe for trout à l'orange and a lot more. So stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night. Time for Michigan Outdoors.
Nice one.
The Emmy Award-winning Michigan Outdoors is brought to you in part by DOC, home of the DOC Super Lens, a virtually unbreakable lightweight polycarbonate lens sold only at DOC, keeping the outdoors in focus.
The afternoon fishing boats cast off the dock at South Haven, carrying decks full of anglers who hope to catch as many perch as the boats brought in from the morning trip. The rotating drum on the docks is the fish scaler, full of perch that the morning anglers caught. South Haven in southern Lake Michigan is one of few Great Lakes ports that has party boats. I'm not talking about party boats. Those you'll find in any port. I'm talking about fishing party boats that carry 40 or 50 anglers at a time who want to catch perch.
Catch these fish is on the bottom. That merely means that when you put your sinkers on the end here, you're going to let this sinker go to the bottom, and you're going to play that area right there. Don't crank it up 3 or 4 turns because that's too high. Leave it right on the very bottom.
Ross is a regular on the Captain Nichols. He loves to help other customers load their buckets with perch. The underwater drop-offs on the graph show Donnie Nichols where the perch are likely to be. Donnie's the captain of this boat. His dad, Don Sr., is the captain of the sister boat. Together, they can take nearly 200 anglers a day to the prime perch fishing grounds. Now, we're marking fish?
Right. We come in here, we come in on the sand, pull up there, and I drop my anchor on the sand, and then back up till we get on the rocks, and then these are all the perch right back in there. It drops from like 20 foot to 26 is what we're in now.
Okay, so this signifies rocks on the bottom, the bumpy.
You can tell by the heavy echo right there. The bumpiness and the heavy echo, and that's fish just all laying just off the bottom.
Those aren't, well, some of those are bumps there, but those fish look thick.
Yeah, they're thick. They're down there like cordwood. It's been like that all week.
And when you say like cordwood, when we came in this morning, or this afternoon getting ready to leave, they were cleaning fish by the bucket load.
Mm-hmm. We had 3,000 fish on the dock this morning between both boats.
3,000?
Yeah, it's a good day.
I don't recall in past years that you've had that many days that are that good. Is it just getting better all the time?
It seems to be getting better over the years. Last year was pretty good. This year's even better now. Hopefully it just keeps on getting better.
Now, I've asked your dad in years past about the techniques of perch fishermen. You get a lot of people who come out here who are amateur fishermen, families, and people who don't really have the fishing technique down pat. Have the fishermen gotten better? Or is it just that easy to catch them?
Well, both, I'd say. It's getting easier to catch them, and we're getting better fishermen. And
what's the bait lately?
Right now we're using minnows just to get them started, and then we go right over to cut bait. The mates will start cutting the perch up, and we use those for bait, and it works real good. Stays on the hooks, easy to use, and people like it. They don't have to chase the minnows around the buckets.
Well, now we've been doing this with you guys for 6, 7 years. Each year we come down and tape a trip. What are the differences between 6, 7 years ago and now?
It seems to run in a cycle. We get studies and stuff all the time from different researchers, and they just say there's more and more fish, more perch in the lake, and it's going to do nothing but get better, and so far that's what it's doing.
Years ago, I remember we used shrimp as one of the baits we used.
Yeah,
Sometimes you'd use wigglers. Do you still use those?
Use those when the water's cold. And in early June now it's hard to get wigglers, and the water's warmed up, so minnows and crabs, we're getting a few crabs now. We'll get into those more in August. But anything will work. We caught 30 fish today on a bear hook just to break a record. So
That's just kidding. Now, was that one of the mates?
Yeah.
who caught it?
Yep. And we had a lady on here today who brought 3 bags of mushrooms, and she got 75 fish on just using mushrooms.
You probably use corn or...
Oh, I've seen corn, I've seen watermelon, marshmallows, anything. They'll bite on anything when they're biting good.
Yeah, it's a double.
The typical perch rig is always made with 2 drop hooks off the main line so you can hook 2 fish at once. But in Michigan, it's legal to fish as many as 4 hooks at once. Now, anglers commonly use 2 rods with 2 hooks on each, but I've never seen 3 or 4 hooks on a perch rig on 1 rod, even though it's legal. One of these days, somebody will try it when the fish are biting hot and heavy. And speaking of that, there's a school of perch that's drifted up towards the surface, only a few feet under the water. They evidently followed up other perch that were being caught. Usually the school stays within a few feet of the bottom, and that's a little over 20 feet down. The crew on the Captain Nichols boats all fish with the customers, trying to teach them how to do it. Even Donnie, our captain, takes time to pull in a few. Watching them haul in perch after perch proves there's definitely a knack to it, something I find a little hard to explain.
Why is it? People have asked, how come the crew on this boat, no matter where they fish, anywhere around here, seem to pull them out of nowhere?
It takes a knack. There's a knack to it. You got to have the right attitude, and they've been doing it. And we send them around the boat just to do that, to show people that there's fish there. You know, a lot of people come out here and expect to set their rod down and catch them all day long, and it takes a little concentration and a knack. And once you get that, then they understand how they can do it all the time.
I mean, is it that the fish are hitting and people aren't feeling the hits? And
It can be that, or it's hard to say. Everybody's different,
but the crew keeps working around.
Yeah, we send them around the boat trying to catch a fish, and they're using the same bait and everything as everybody else. So we don't use nothing special or different.
But they do catch fish.
Yeah,
you can sure see them. Oh, there's a customer who's got one.
One by one, and every now and then 2 by 2 perch were added to the catch. When both boats got back to the dock, we found we didn't do as well as the morning boats. They had caught 3,000. The 2 afternoon boats caught about 1,300. Donnie's wife, Emily, weighed the largest ones for the jackpot, while everybody else lined up their buckets at the fish cleaning station, where the crew scales the perch in rotating drums, cleans and fillets them for 10 cents each, so every angler can take home the perch they caught ready for the pan. That's a great deal if you ask me. But not every perch made it back to the dock. Tim Farragon, fishing next to me, was evidently into catch and release.
A good sign.
Did you do that? That's the second time you've done that. Well, perch fishing isn't really suited for catch and release. It's definitely catch and fillet, and what better place to do it than on a party boat? That's why we make it an annual trip. We're looking forward to next year already. Talk about incredible happenings. Last week in the Weekly World News, which you can find, it's a tabloid in your grocery store, we have a front page story of a farmer who shoots a 23-pound grasshopper. Oh, is that incredible or what? I don't think he got it certified, though, and he didn't send it in on our Fishing or Hunting Award form, so unfortunately he can't make it in our trophy book. Oh, sure, it weighs a few pounds less than a giant grasshopper, but it's still a big turkey. 18.5 pounds with a 9.5-inch beard. Stuart Wendy from Saginaw caught it in Alcona County. From Little Bass Lake in Lake County came this big bass, a 22-inch, 6-pound largemouth. Dan Shine from Hudsonville caught it on a plastic crawler. Also 22 inches, 6.5 pounds, is this largemouth. Gary Carter caught it on a crankbait from Genesee County's Jack Hat Lake. Ben Knoll catches a lot of trophy fish. Here's his Lake Superior lake trout. 26 pounds, 40 inches long, beautiful coloration. He was casting a jig. I tell you, that's as pretty a lake trout as you'll see. Mary Hinkle from Taylorsville, Kentucky caught this 16-pound steelhead on a dodger and fly off Manistee. John Hubbard Jr. from Grandville caught this 18-pound steelhead on a J-plug off Grand Haven. Terry Pipe from Goodrich caught this 19-pound steelhead on a bomber off Frankfurt. And for a story about the difficulties of landing a big fish, here's Harold Buter from Holland, who luckily boated an 18-pound steelhead he caught on a night crawler from Lake Makatawa.
I was fishing for walleyes and drifting, and I hooked that one and had a 6-pound test line with a number 6 hook, and finally got him up by the boat. And we got one of these rubber landing nets for walleyes, you know, and he went right through the net. So we finally managed to get him back through the net. So my son was with me, and he says, I'll have to land him by hand. So he did, but he got away from him again. He slipped away, and he took off again about 100 yards and brought him back again. And he finally just flipped him right in the boat. And
No kidding.
that was it.
You got more chances of that fish than almost you deserve.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, congratulations. Great steelhead.
I don't know what's more miraculous, his boating technique or catching a steelhead on a night crawler. But any way you look at it, Harold Buter's our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Angler of the Week. For months, we've been promoting a wild game dinner at the Royal Scott Golf Course in Lansing. April 13th, that would have been this weekend. However, last week we announced it was canceled. The reason was the local public health inspector, for all practical purposes, shut it down. Now, Dean Sandel is the Director of Environmental Health for the Mid-Michigan District Health Department. I asked him why they waited until 2 weeks before our dinner to tell us we couldn't hold it.
That it came to our attention. The sanitarian contacted me and discussed the issue and wanted to know what the best route to be was. And we reviewed the law, both in the state and from the new wild game bill, to make sure of the language, make sure what we were doing, and then we began to make contacts on it.
All the wild game dinners we've held over the years have been in licensed restaurants, but it's just been the past year that local health agencies have threatened to stop these dinners. Joel Latoff is the director of the Mid-Michigan Health District, and he explained why game dinners have come under closer scrutiny.
And further, there have been actual food poisonings from unapproved sources, wild game specifically. A group had a wild game dinner in this state not long ago, and unfortunately, many of them did become ill as a consequence of some of the meats that were served there. So it's a legitimate and serious public health hazard. We're talking about disease events that can really permanently hurt people or kill them. And we've seen it happen. It does happen. It's a real risk.
Would you say this would tend to happen more with a wild game dinner than with personal consumption at home of wild game?
Well, the basic problem is in the process. When you have someone at home working in their kitchen, their refrigerator, their stove, they're used to working with all that equipment, and by and large, people follow pretty good common sense rules. But when you take those same people and put them in a voluntary situation where they don't do this too frequently, and now they're dealing with huge quantities of food that must be kept cold or hot and served properly and prepared properly, it's not a frequent kind of event for them. And that's where many of these problems come from.
The law would have allowed us, there are some loopholes that we could have used. We could have gone, for example, to a VFW hall or someplace like that and held this same wild game dinner.
Well, yes and no. That is an ambiguity in the law. The law says you're not to serve wild game and unapproved food from an unapproved source at a licensed establishment. But the issue, the reason that there is the concern is that this food could ultimately contaminate other foods or equipment in a fixed food establishment and then hurt other people. There are ways to deal with those risks and those concerns. You can lower the risk by adding some procedures, even in a fixed food establishment, so you could serve wild game and still lower the risk and have it done safely. The current law doesn't accommodate that idea. There would be some room, in my judgment, for improvement to say if you're going to serve food from an unapproved source, then these are the extra procedures that you need to put in place to protect the people's health and to let them know that they're taking a little extra risk. Let them make that judgment. If they want to do it, they can do that as long as these extra procedures are in place.
But right now, it is, for the wild game dinners that go on, it rests on the judgment of the local health department or health unit. As I understand it, they can decide whether they think the dinner poses a health threat.
As we had said before, there is a lot of variability from local health department to local health department and how they're choosing to address these issues. So to a certain extent, that's true. There's going to be some local judgment on it, and it's going to almost be on a case-by-case basis.
Now, is this something, though, that can be resolved with the law the way it currently is, or should we ask for some changes in the law to specify?
Well, two things. The dinner can go on, and we're going to work with the establishment that you've chosen to work with. And if they'll use the procedures that we ask, the dinner will go on. That could be judged to be somewhat outside of the law. But, you know, locally, we have to use common sense here. You know. Number two, I would encourage you to talk with the folks in the legislature. We have some excellent local legislators. They're very open-minded about the need to refine the current law so that we can accommodate these kinds of things in the future.
Because of all the uncertainties involved, there was no way we could continue with our plans for this weekend's Wild Game Dinner. Our Outdoors Foundation Board of Directors is going to have to decide whether they're going to reschedule it or what they're going to do. But the problem still remains, not only for us, but for many other Wild Game Dinners around the state. What's going to happen? Charlie Keenan, you're our SOS Bureau Director. What's your plan?
Well, the first thing we're going to need to do is to check with the legislature, talk to our people down there, talk to the Department of Health and the Division of Environment, talk to the local staff that's out there in the counties, find out what they need as far as wording to standardize this and bring some consistency to the decisions that are necessary so everybody's treated fairly.
Speaking of legislation, one of Tom Alley's proposals to recreate a fish and game agency is to move the environmental health aspects of the DNR out into public health, the public health department. Now, Joe Latoff is a hunter and a fisherman. He's the director of the Mid-Michigan Public Health District, and he explains why he feels this move would be a practical one.
Most of the non-game activities that the DNR does really is directed at a series of indirect and direct contributing factors to health problems. That's why we do those things. They ultimately relate to public health. We're concerned about lead in the environment because of what lead will do to our children, for example. So lead in fish is a concern because of a health problem. It makes much more sense to me to get those programs into the public health sector where they can all relate to each other and ultimately be managed and focused on the health problems they relate to. Get them out of DNR so that DNR can, again, regain the imagery that it once had of being a friend to the hunter and fisherman, a friend to the outdoors. There are a lot of fine folks in DNR, and they don't know how to do that, but this dual role just makes it impossible for them to really do that well.
So you think it would be better to put those functions in public health rather than a separate environmental protection agency?
Sure, they're public health programs. Ask why do we have this particular program, whether it's sewage disposal or whether it's heavy metals in the environment. The reasons are public health reasons. They're factors that contribute to public health problems. So why not put them in one place where they could be managed in such a way to say, are all these various programs that relate to this health problem working well together? They have to work well together to be effective, and the more dispersed they are, I mean, it's difficult enough in large organizations to have things done in a well-coordinated way. At least get them in the same agency.
So many people tend to feel that something's going to be lost if this is taken out of the DNR. But these things came from public health in the first place, didn't they?
They came from public health, and contrary to that belief, my view is that things would be gained if this happened. They would be gained because they would improve the public health process, protecting the public health, and frankly, I think DNR would gain because they could then reestablish that imagery in the community, that role that they once had as a revered friend to the sportsman and the person concerned about the environment. You can't do that and do these other things also because they conflict. The folks who, when I was a kid watching the Mort Neff show, who came on from DNR were revered. And when we met a CO in the woods hunting or fishing, it was a thrill to meet that person. Well, it's not such a thrill anymore because they have so many responsibilities related to these other kinds of management issues that it's contradictory.
This type of DNR split is one of the issues that we'll be addressing on April 16th at that public hearing in Lansing. If you're interested in this DNR split, you might want to show up. That's going to be an interesting meeting. Now, let's get on to Kathy Beitler, who holds our wild game dinners right here every week.
Robert Plant sent us a recipe for trout a la orange, and this is one of those
A
simple...
l'orange.
A l'orange.
Yes.
One of those simple recipes, but very, very good. We're going to use lake trout for this, and it does need to be skinned, and then, of course, the fat and everything taken off. Just trimmed up real nice there.
Yeah, now that, even if you cut that brown, well, that lateral line isn't
It's not too
there.
bad on this one, right?
No, but for a smaller lake trout.
And then we're going to make a, just a dip, really, a wash out of egg and milk to make the crumbs stick. And you are going to make just a coating on this. It's not going to be real heavy, and you're not going to fry it.
What's that, cornmeal?
Yes, and you just want to thoroughly cover it, and then just drizzle a little bit of butter on top. And then the only other thing goes on this is the orange juice.
A simple recipe.
Very simple.
You got to pour that orange juice just a little bit faster there, Kat.
Right. And then you can put breadcrumbs on top. Now, these are optional, and that really makes it just a little bit crustier.
Well, it's such a simple recipe. Let's find out what suggestions Bob Garner has.
Lake trout is very, very good, but I think it's better if you can sort of cut across the grain and thin it down a little bit before you cook it, because it's
Thick pieces.
It's very thick, and I don't know. I like it just a little bit thinner. But the crust for a batter or a crust on something, this is absolutely delicious.
And the orange comes through just enough in this. The orange juice does just that little tiny hint of it.
Hey, I'll testify to that, because I'm not big on fruit flavors in my fish. If I want fruit flavors, I get Fruit Loops or something like that and put them on the fish. But this is very nicely done. Enhances the flavor. Beautiful coating.
Well, it does, like, you put lemon juice on fish and it tastes good.
Yep.
I like lemon pepper.
Just a little bit, though.
I like Mrs. Dash's lemon seasonings.
Just that little tiny hint of it.
And I like this. It's just
Much more like a pastry, a very fine French pastry.
And
All orange, huh?
And that answers the question, why is Bob Garner picking all the stuff off the top?
The pastry.
You'll love to pick the breading off, too. It's a delightful taste. And don't restrict this recipe just to trout. Try walleye. All in all, it looks like a great weekend outdoors. Get out there if you can. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
Are they on the other side? They just go right down there. Over the top of this. No. So, where do you want me to? Why have you set up over here? Okay. I'll sit right behind here in the pine. I'm gonna lay down right under this branch right here. This for a screen, right? Like that over the top.